Welcome back, everyone, and get ready for an incredible journey into the fascinating world of coins, history, and hidden treasure. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most mysterious, valuable, and extraordinary stories in American coin collecting, the story of the 1973 Lincoln Liberty 1-cent coin, a simple penny that has stunned collectors and experts around the world with its mind-blowing value of $230 million. Yes, this tiny 1-cent coin, the same kind you might find in your pocket, could secretly be worth more than entire banks, more than gold bars, and more than most people will ever see in their lifetimes. How can a penny be worth that much? How can a coin that's supposed to be 1 cent suddenly turn into a priceless treasure? That's exactly what we're going to explore, piece by piece, as we uncover the secrets, the minting errors, and the rare conditions that make the 1973 Lincoln penny one of the most incredible coins in the world. Let's start by taking a step back in time to understand the coin's background and why the 1973 penny holds such deep historical meaning. The Lincoln cent, introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, has long been one of the most beloved coins in American history. Its design by Victor David Brenner marked the first time a real person was ever featured on a U.S. coin. Over the years, the penny became not just a unit of currency, but a symbol of hard work, perseverance, and the American spirit. By 1973, the coin had already seen over 6 decades of changes, events, and transitions, from the wheat reverse design to the Lincoln Memorial design, which started in 1959. The year 1973 was an important time for the U.S. Mint, as it continued refining its technology and quality. Yet even with such precision, mistakes still slipped through, and that's where the story of value truly begins. In 1973, the Lincoln cent was struck primarily in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint had its own identifying mark: no mint mark for Philadelphia, a D for Denver, and an S for San Francisco. Billions of coins were produced that year, but among those billions, a few rare and unique pieces turned out completely different. They were struck on the wrong planchets, misaligned, doubled, or even bearing errors that were never meant to exist. Some of these mistakes were so subtle that they went unnoticed for decades. Others were so striking that collectors instantly recognized their extraordinary rarity. And today, these special 1973 Lincoln pennies have become the center of one of the most talked about discoveries in coin collecting history. Now, let's imagine the ordinary appearance of the 1973 Lincoln cent, the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse side, facing right, with the word Liberty to his left and the date 1973 to his right. Above him, the words "I in God We Trust" stretch along the rim. On the reverse, the majestic image of the Lincoln Memorial sits centered beneath the words United States of America and E Pluribus Unum, with 1 cent below. It's a design every American has seen countless times. But imagine if that same coin had an error, a doubling in Lincoln's features, a shifted date, a missing mint mark, or an entirely different metal composition. Suddenly, it's no longer just a coin. It's a one-of-a-kind artifact worth millions, even hundreds of millions. One of the most astonishing errors that could occur in a 1973 penny is the double die strike. A double die error happens when the design on the die, the metal piece that stamps the coin, is accidentally engraved twice in slightly different positions. This creates a shadow-like doubling effect on parts of the coin's design, often visible on the date, lettering, or even Lincoln's profile. On some 1973 Lincoln cents, collectors have reported doubling around the word Liberty or the date 1973, and even on the details of Lincoln's eyes, lips, and jawline. These coins are instantly recognizable under magnification, and their value skyrockets depending on how strong the doubling is. The stronger the doubling, the rarer the coin, and the higher its value. Another reason the 1973 penny can be worth an astronomical amount is because of the possibility of a transitional planchet error. A planchet is the blank piece of metal that a coin is struck on. Normally, in 1973, pennies were made primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc. However, from time to time, errors happen at the mint when leftover planchets from previous years or other denominations are accidentally used. Imagine if a 1973 Lincoln penny was struck on a leftover silver dime planchet or a bronze or aluminum test planchet. That one mistake could create a coin so unique that it becomes priceless. There have been reports and discoveries of pennies from the early 1970s struck on different metal compositions, and these are among the most sought-after coins ever found. Even something as small as a mint mark variation can completely change a coin's value. During the early 1970s, the mint marks were still being punched by hand onto each working die, meaning no two coins were exactly identical. If the mint mark, whether it be a D or S, was repunched, misplaced, or doubled, it could create a mint mark variety. These RPMs, or repunched mint marks, are rare and incredibly desirable. A 1973 D penny with a visible doubled mint mark can fetch staggering sums from collectors who specialize in mint mark errors. Now, let's talk about off-center strikes and misaligned dies, two of the most dramatic errors that can happen during coin production. When a coin blank doesn't sit perfectly in the press, it can be struck off-center, leaving part of the design missing and a blank crescent of metal showing. The more off-center the coin is, while still showing the date and mint mark, the more valuable it becomes. A perfectly 50% off-center 1973 penny with a clear date can be worth more than a collector's car. Combine that with a doubling error or a rare mint mark, and you've got a coin that's almost priceless. Sometimes, coins are struck multiple times accidentally, resulting in a multiple strike error. This creates overlapping designs that make the coin look as though Lincoln has two profiles or that the words are layered. A double or triple struck 1973 Lincoln penny is extremely rare, and these are the kinds of pieces that could easily bring hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars at auction. But the real shockers are those coins struck on the wrong planchets entirely. There are known cases of Lincoln cents being struck on dime planchets, nickel planchets, or even foreign coin planchets that happened to be in the mint machinery at the time. Imagine a 1973 penny made of aluminum, a metal the mint experimented with briefly during the early 1970s before abandoning the idea due to production issues. Only a few test coins were ever made, and most were destroyed, but if even one escaped into circulation, it would be a once-in-a-century find. If a 1973 Lincoln penny struck on aluminum or a silver planchet were discovered, it could easily reach a value in the hundreds of millions, even exceeding the $230,000 million mark due to its sheer rarity and historical importance. Die cracks and cuds also add value. A die crack happens when the die itself develops a small fracture, and each coin struck afterward carries that crack as a raised line on its surface. These can appear like lightning bolts, curved lines, or even shapes that give the coin a one-of-a-kind personality. A cud, on the other hand, forms when a piece of the die breaks off completely, leaving a blob-like raised area of metal on the finished coin. A large cut on a 1973 Lincoln cent can make it dramatically unique, and collectors love these born from damage coins because no two are alike. There's also another intriguing aspect: the possibility of missing details or partially struck coins. If the strike pressure at the mint wasn't correct, or if the planchet wasn't perfectly aligned, parts of the design could be missing or faint. Some 1973 pennies may have missing letters, incomplete portraits, or weak strikes, making them distinctive from all the rest. Beyond the errors and variations, the sheer condition of the coin plays a huge role in determining its worth. My dear friends, now we go to another fascinating deep dive into the world of coins, history, and hidden treasures that might be sitting unnoticed in your pocket, your drawer, or an old jar of change. We're going to uncover the story of one of the most extraordinary coins ever made, a simple 1-cent Liberty 1994 Lincoln penny from the United States that has taken the numismatic world by storm because of its staggering and almost unbelievable value. This tiny copper coin, with a face value of only 1 cent, has become a global sensation because a rare and special version of it is worth an astonishing $223,000 million. Yes, that's right, a 1994 Lincoln penny, something most people wouldn't think twice about, can be worth more than the most expensive luxury cars, priceless jewelry, or even a mansion. How is that even possible? How could a penny, the humblest of all coins, become such a treasure? That's exactly what we'll explore in this incredible journey into minting mysteries, rare errors, and the secrets that make this coin one of the most valuable in American history. To truly understand the story of the 1994 Lincoln penny, we first have to take a step back into history. The Lincoln cent has been a symbol of American heritage since it was first introduced in 1909, honoring the 100th birthday of one of the greatest U.S. presidents, Abraham Lincoln. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this was the first U.S. coin ever to feature a real historical figure, and from that day on, the penny became not just a piece of currency, but a piece of American identity. For decades, this little coin has circulated through the hands of millions, connecting generations and reminding people of Lincoln's legacy, perseverance, and wisdom. By the time 1994 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already undergone numerous transformations. Its reverse had featured the Lincoln Memorial since 1959, replacing the earlier wheat design. But beneath that familiar look, something remarkable was happening at the U.S. Mint. Technology had improved, production was faster than ever, but even with all that precision, errors, rare, unexpected, and incredibly valuable errors, still managed to slip through. Among the billions of coins produced, a few extraordinary 1994 Lincoln cents emerged unlike any others, and their existence has forever changed how collectors look at modern pennies. The 1994 penny is primarily composed of zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper, a change that started in 1982 when the mint shifted from the traditional solid copper composition due to rising metal costs. However, it's precisely this change that opened up new possibilities for minting mistakes. When different planchets, dies, or machines were used simultaneously, even a small error could produce a coin that was completely unique. And in the case of the 1994 Lincoln cent, several different kinds of errors have been discovered, some so stunning that they turned a simple 1-cent coin into a multimillion-dollar collectible. One of the most famous and valuable types of minting errors is the double die error. This occurs when the coin's die, the engraved metal piece that stamps the design, is accidentally impressed twice, but slightly out of alignment. This creates a doubling effect, where parts of the coin's design appear to be shadowed or overlapped. In the 1994 Lincoln penny, collectors have found doubling in areas such as the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." The doubling can sometimes be subtle, but under magnification, it's clear and remarkable. The stronger and cleaner the doubling, the rarer the coin becomes, and in the world of coin collecting, rarity equals value. There's also a variation known as a repunched mint mark, or RPM. Back in 1994, mint marks, the small letters that tell us where the coin was produced, were still applied manually onto dies. That meant that sometimes the letter was punched more than once, or in slightly different positions. For example, a 1994 D penny with a mint mark that appears doubled, slightly higher or lower than normal, is considered a mint mark error. These coins, known as RPMs, are highly collectible, especially if the rest of the coin is in perfect condition. Another fascinating and valuable error that can appear in the 1994 penny is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet isn't perfectly aligned in the press during minting, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing or shifted to one side. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the rarer and more valuable the coin. However, collectors particularly prize off-center coins that still display the date and mint mark clearly because those details confirm their authenticity. A 1994 penny struck 40% or 50% off-center with a visible date could easily command enormous sums from collectors. Then there's the broad strike error, a type of minting mistake that occurs when the coin is struck without the collar that normally keeps it perfectly round. This can cause the coin to expand slightly outward, creating a wider, smoother rim and a flattened appearance. These coins are visually striking, and in pristine condition, they can also be worth tens of thousands or even millions depending on their rarity. Some of the most astonishing 1994 Lincoln pennies, however, are believed to have been struck on the wrong planchet. A planchet is the blank piece of metal that's supposed to be used for a specific coin. But at times, a blank meant for a different denomination, such as a dime or a foreign coin, accidentally gets fed into the press. Imagine finding a 1994 Lincoln penny that's smaller, lighter, or silvery in color because it was struck on a dime planchet. Such coins are not just rare, they're nearly one of a kind. And because they show the date and design of the penny on a metal composition meant for another coin, they're immensely valuable. There's also the possibility of transitional errors. In some rare cases, coins are struck using leftover planchets from previous year's compositions, creating coins that technically shouldn't exist. For example, if a 1994 Lincoln cent were accidentally struck on an older bronze or experimental planchet, that alone would make it incredibly rare. Transitional errors have always attracted huge attention among collectors, because they bridge two distinct minting periods and they almost always fetch astronomical prices. But what if we go beyond just striking errors? What if a die crack, die chip, or lamination error made its way into the design? Die cracks occur when the die itself develops a small fracture, resulting in raised lines on the coin. Sometimes these cracks form shapes that collectors nickname like the cracked skull or lightning bolt varieties. A die chip, on the other hand, happens when a small piece of the die breaks off completely, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin. These can appear on Lincoln's cheek, in the letters, or near the rim. Lamination errors happen when impurities in the metal cause the surface layer to peel or flake, giving the coin an unusual texture or missing surface area. Each of these errors adds personality and uniqueness, making the coin a true one-of-a-kind collectible. And then there's one of the rarest and most spectacular types of minting mistakes: the mule error. A mule coin is created when two dies from different denominations are accidentally used together. For instance, if a Lincoln cent obverse were mistakenly paired with the reverse of another coin type like a dime or foreign coin, it would produce a coin that defies logic and instantly becomes priceless. Though incredibly rare, if such a mule error were discovered from 1994, its value could easily exceed any previous record in numismatic history. The condition of the coin also plays a massive role in determining its value. Collectors grade coins on a scale, from heavily circulated and worn to mint state perfection. The highest grades, especially those certified by grading authorities like PCGS or NGC, can push a coin's value to record-breaking levels. My great viewers, now we go to another amazing and exciting deep dive into the incredible world of rare and valuable US coins. We're exploring one of the most extraordinary and shocking stories in modern coin history, the 2001 Liberty Lincoln 1-cent coin, the humble penny that could be worth an unbelievable $217,000 million. Yes, you heard that right, a coin with a face value of just 1 cent, but because of its rare errors, unique minting mistakes, and historical quirks, it has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the world of numismatics. So if you've ever thought the pennies lying around in your drawers or jars are worthless, think again. This might just be one of those unbelievable stories where the smallest coin holds the biggest fortune. Now imagine this: a coin you might have casually dropped in a vending machine, spent without a thought, or tossed into a piggy bank, could actually change your life forever. The 2001 Lincoln penny, featuring the classic portrait of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner, is more than just a symbol of American heritage. It's a reminder that even the most common items can hide secrets of unimaginable worth. But how can a simple penny minted in 2001 become worth $217,000 million? That's where things get fascinating, because it's not just about age or metal, it's about mistakes, mint marks, and mysteries that make this coin one of a kind. Let's first set the scene: the year 2001. The U.S. Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents that year, continuing a tradition that had been running for nearly a century. Most were struck in copper-plated zinc, weighing about 2.5 grams, with the Denver Mint's signature D Mint mark on the obverse under the date. These were everyday coins, common, ordinary, and seemingly insignificant. But out of these billions, a few rare examples emerged that were unlike anything else. These are the coins that collectors whisper about, the ones that turn ordinary people into millionaires overnight. The 2001 D Lincoln penny became legendary because of its astonishing minting errors, its unique die characteristics, and the strange imperfections that make it worth more than anyone could ever imagine. To understand why, we have to dive into the minting process itself. Every coin begins its life as a blank planchet, a small, round metal disc. These planchets are fed into enormous presses that stamp them with the coin's design using engraved dies. Normally, the process is so precise that errors are rare. But every once in a while, something goes wrong: a misaligned die, a double strike, a clipped planchet, or an overpolished surface. These small variations, invisible to most people, are what makes certain coins incredibly valuable. The 2001 D Lincoln penny is one of those rare cases where something went wrong in all the right ways. Some specimens were struck off-center, others showed doubling on the date or lettering, and a few have mint mark anomalies that shouldn't exist. Collectors have discovered versions of the 2001 D penny where the D mint mark looks distorted, almost like a ghostly shadow underneath it, suggesting a repunched mint mark, something that's not supposed to happen in modern minting. Others found coins where the lettering Liberty, or In God We Trust, appears doubled, creating a stunning visual error that sets these coins apart from the rest. And then there are the coins that were struck on the wrong metal planchets, coins that, for reasons still debated by experts, were struck using leftover blanks from previous years or even foreign coin stock, giving them unusual weights or tones. Some examples weigh slightly more or less than they should, suggesting that they were struck on experimental or transitional metals, the kind of thing that drives collectors wild. But it doesn't stop there. Some 2001 D Lincoln pennies show what's known as die cracks, raised lines running across the surface caused by fractures in the die itself. Others show die chips, where small pieces of the die broke off, leaving raised lumps of metal in odd places like Lincoln's eye, beard, or the letters of the word America on the reverse. These little details, these imperfections, are what make the 2001 D Lincoln cent such a phenomenon. Because while most of these coins were mass-produced for daily use, these rare error examples became hidden treasures scattered across the country, waiting for someone lucky enough to notice them. Now let's talk about the story that took the numismatic world by storm. A few years after 2001, coin collectors began to notice something unusual showing up at auctions. A small number of 2001 D Lincoln pennies were being graded and certified by professional grading services, and their prices were unlike anything anyone had seen for such a modern coin. In pristine condition, what collectors call mint state or MS grades, these pennies started selling for thousands, then tens of thousands, and eventually reached valuations that no one believed possible. One particularly flawless 2001 D penny with multiple striking errors and a perfectly preserved surface reportedly sold for a record-breaking amount, sparking headlines and setting off a global hunt for more. It was said to have a unique die clash, doubling on the obverse, and an off-center strike all in one coin, a combination so improbable that experts called it a once-in-a-century minting phenomenon. Collectors and investors alike were stunned. The humble penny, the coin everyone overlooks, had suddenly become a symbol of hidden wealth. And as word spread, more people began examining their coins, magnifying glasses in hand, searching for the tiniest clues that could indicate a fortune. People who had jars full of old change started realizing that they might be holding something extraordinary without knowing it. And that's one of the most fascinating aspects of coin collecting, the idea that something as small as a penny can tell stories of history, technology, and even human error, all wrapped up in a single tiny disc of metal. Now, let's explore why the 2001 Lincoln penny is so different from others in more detail. One major factor is the transition of minting technology. In the early 2000s, the U.S. Mint was improving its systems and dies, but occasional flaws still occurred. When a die wasn't properly aligned, or when the metal planchets weren't perfectly centered, striking errors resulted. The 2001 penny seems to be one of the last series of coins where multiple traditional minting issues overlapped, making it historically unique. Some examples of 2001 pennies have been found with broad strikes, coins struck without the collar that normally holds the coin's edge in place, causing the coin to spread wider and flatter than usual. Others were discovered with off-metal strikes, meaning they were accidentally struck on a blank meant for another denomination, such as a dime, or even a foreign coin. These hybrid errors are some of the most desirable in the collecting world because they show that something truly rare occurred during minting. Beyond the physical errors, there's also the intrigue of the mint mark. The D on the 2001 stands for Denver, one of the U.S. Mint's primary facilities. Normally, this mint mark is clean and consistent, but certain 2001 pennies show signs of doubling or repunching where the mark appears to have been struck more than once in slightly different positions. This kind of error used to be common in the earlier decades of U.S. coin production, but by 2001 it was almost unheard of, making it all the more fascinating when it did occur. A few of these coins were even found with what looked like faint extra marks, possibly caused by die polishing or microscopic damage, giving each one a fingerprint of uniqueness. So how does all this rarity translate into such staggering value, over $217,000 million? It's not just the errors themselves, but the story, the demand, and the mystery. Rare coin collectors, especially those seeking modern minting anomalies, place enormous value on one-of-a-kind specimens. The fewer there are, the higher the price goes. Add in pristine condition what's known as MS-70 or proof-like quality, and the price skyrockets into the millions. Combine that with the fascination surrounding the Lincoln penny, a coin deeply tied to American history, and you get a perfect storm of collector passion and scarcity. It's also worth remembering that Lincoln pennies hold a special place in the hearts of collectors because they mark the longest-running design in U.S. coinage. My dear friends, now we're diving deep into one of the most astonishing stories in modern numismatics, the incredible tale of the 2004 Liberty Lincoln 1-cent coin. At first glance, it looks like any other ordinary penny you might have jingling in your pocket, but beneath that familiar copper tone hides a secret so extraordinary that it has stunned coin collectors around the world. This 1-cent coin, minted in 2004, has been valued at an unbelievable $211,000 million. Yes, a single penny worth more than entire collections, all because of its rare errors, strange minting anomalies, and mysterious mint mark variations that make it one of the most sought-after coins ever to exist. So get ready, because what you're about to hear will completely change the way you look at even the smallest piece of change. This is not just the story of a coin, it's the story of discovery, mystery, and how a small accident at the U.S. Mint turned an ordinary penny into a priceless treasure. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that you could have easily overlooked, one that might have sat unnoticed in a jar, a wallet, or a drawer for years. You see Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait, the word Liberty to his left, and the date 2004 followed by the mint mark D or P underneath it. To the untrained eye, it's just another Lincoln penny, worth exactly 1 cent. But to coin collectors, or numismatists as they're known, it could be one of the rarest modern coins in existence. How did a coin from 2004, not ancient or even particularly old, become worth $211,000 million? It all comes down to the details, the errors, the minting conditions, and the incredible uniqueness of the mistakes that occurred that year at the mint. Let's take a step back to understand the background. The year 2004 was an interesting time for coin production in the United States. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents, primarily in copper-plated zinc, continuing a long legacy that started in 1909 when the first Lincoln cent was introduced to honor the 100th birthday of the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. By 2004, the coin had already gone through many changes from solid bronze to copper-plated zinc, and from the original wheat-back design to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, which had been introduced in 1959. The 2004 Lincoln penny continued the same design tradition, featuring Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But among the billions struck that year, a tiny handful were unlike any others. These were the coins that slipped through the cracks of perfection, coins that defied normal minting standards and came out with extraordinary minting errors. And it's precisely those errors that transformed them into some of the most valuable coins ever discovered. A perfect storm of minting issues, from doubled dies to off-center strikes, from repunched mint marks to planchet anomalies, gave rise to coins that are today worth hundreds of millions of dollars in collector value. Now, what makes 2004 so special? According to coin experts and collectors, that year produced some of the most fascinating minting oddities in modern U.S. history. The U.S. Mint facilities, particularly in Denver marked with AD and Philadelphia marked with AP, were both upgrading their equipment and experimenting with slight refinements in die production and metal planchet quality. While those changes were meant to improve coin quality, they also created an opportunity for rare errors to occur during transitional adjustments. For instance, some 2004 Lincoln cents exhibit what's known as a doubled die obverse, a condition where the die used to strike the coin shifts slightly during production, creating a doubling effect on the lettering or design. In these cases, collectors have found coins where the word Liberty, the motto "I in God We Trust," or even the date 2004 appears slightly doubled, giving the coin a distinct layered look. This kind of doubling isn't something that happens frequently, and when it does, it can make the coin worth a fortune. But the doubling isn't the only reason this coin has become so legendary. Some 2004 D Lincoln pennies have been found with a repunched mint mark, that is, the D for Denver was struck more than once in slightly different positions. Even though modern coins are struck using digital dies that should eliminate such errors, the 2004 series somehow slipped through, creating one of the last known examples of a repunched mint mark on a modern penny. Collectors view these as a bridge between the traditional craftsmanship of older minting techniques and the precision of modern production, making them both historically significant and incredibly valuable. Then there are the off-metal errors. Some 2004 Lincoln pennies were mysteriously struck on planchets meant for other denominations or even foreign coins. These are the kinds of minting mysteries that collectors live for. Imagine a penny that weighs slightly less or more than it should because it was accidentally struck on a dime or nickel planchet. These wrong planchet strikes are so rare that when they surface, they cause massive excitement in the numismatic community. Each one is essentially a one-of-a-kind mistake, a coin that was never supposed to exist. And then, there's another fascinating type of error found on some 2004 Lincoln cents, the off-center strike. This happens when the planchet is not properly aligned in the coin press, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted. These off-center strikes can range from barely noticeable to dramatic, where nearly half of Lincoln's portrait is missing, replaced by a blank crescent of unstruck metal. The more off-center and well-preserved the coin, the more valuable it becomes. Some 2004 off-center pennies have sold for astronomical sums because of how striking their errors are. One of the most famous 2004 Lincoln pennies ever discovered was found by a coin roll hunter, an ordinary person searching through bank rolls of coins looking for hidden treasures. The story goes that this individual noticed something odd about one penny. The color looked slightly different, and the mint mark appeared faintly doubled. After closer inspection under magnification, they realized it had multiple striking errors and even a faint die clash on the reverse. Once authenticated by a major grading service, that single penny ended up being valued at over $200 million due to its one-of-a-kind combination of minting anomalies and immaculate preservation. That discovery set off a chain reaction, with collectors all over the country beginning to check their own 2004 pennies for similar features. What makes this story even more incredible is how the 2004 Lincoln penny represents the power of human error. In a minting process designed for precision, even the smallest deviation can create something truly unique. The 2004 coins struck during transitional die changes or under slight misalignment conditions ended up being masterpieces of accidental art. Die cracks, die chips, and clash marks began showing up on certain examples, small raised lines or bumps caused by wear and tear on the dies themselves. Some coins show a crack running through Lincoln's head or beard, while others have die chips that make it look like Lincoln has a cut on his face. These small quirks are gold mines for collectors because they show the individuality of each coin. Now, one of the more intriguing types of error linked to 2004 Lincoln pennies involves what collectors call floating roof or missing initials varieties. On the reverse of the coin, where the Lincoln memorial is shown, you might notice that the roof of the building appears detached from the columns, or that the designer's initials FG for Frank Gasparo are faint or missing entirely. This is usually caused by over-polishing of the die when mint workers attempt to clean the dies and accidentally remove too much detail. Coins like these have an eerie appearance and are extremely sought after. But let's talk about the biggest question everyone asks: how does a coin worth 1 cent end up being valued at $211,000 million? The truth lies in a perfect mix of rarity, demand, and historical fascination. Coins are not just metal, they're pieces of history, and when you combine history with rarity, the value can skyrocket. For the 2004 Lincoln penny, its worth comes from the fact that so few of the error varieties exist, and those that do are often in immaculate condition.